3 armed men broke through the front door at 2:47 a.m. They thought they were hitting an easy target. A single guy living alone in a quiet suburban house. Big mistake, because the man who lived there wasn't just any homeowner, he was Delta Force. And the roommate sleeping upstairs? A 90-pound German Shepherd trained to neutralize threats in under 3 seconds. The burglars had 15 seconds before they realized they'd just walked into the wrong house. And by then, it was already too late. Before we begin, please tell us where in the world you are watching from. And if this story touches your heart, please subscribe for more. The house at 1847 Maple Ridge Drive looked like every other house on the block. You know the type. 2-story colonial, neat lawn, black shutters. A basketball hoop over the garage that probably hadn't been used in months. The kind of place where nothing ever happens, where neighbors wave as they get their mail and everyone's in bed by 10. But here's the thing about assumptions. They'll get you killed. Marcus Webb bought that house 14 months ago. Cash, no mortgage, no co-signer, just a wire transfer from an account that had been steadily growing for 12 years while he was busy doing things he could never talk about at dinner parties. Not that he went to dinner parties. Marcus was 34 years old, 6'1". Lean in that wiry, dangerous way that comes from carrying 80 pounds of gear through Hindu Kush mountains, not from a gym membership. His hair was dark, cut military short because old habits die hard. His eyes were grey. The kind of grey that looked right through you, that assessed threats and calculated distances and registered exits before you'd even finished saying hello. He'd been Delta Force for 12 years. 12 years of missions that didn't exist, of nights that never happened, of confirmed kills that would never appear in any official record. He'd been in Mosul when the city burned, in Syria when the world wasn't watching, in places that didn't have names on maps, doing things that kept people like his neighbors safe while they slept in their neat houses with their neat lawns. And then one day, his body said enough. It wasn't dramatic. No Hollywood injury. No dying in a buddy's arms moment. It was his left knee, shredded from a hard landing in Yemen. His back, compressed from too many parachute drops. His hearing, damaged from too many explosions at close range. The doctors said he could push through. The commanders said he still had plenty to give. But Marcus knew. He knew when a weapon was past its prime, when the tool couldn't perform the mission anymore. So he took his honorable discharge, his service medals that he kept in a drawer and never looked at, and his pension, and he bought the quietest house he could find in the quietest neighborhood in suburban North Carolina. He thought he'd be alone. He was wrong about that, too. Havoc came into his life on Marcus's last deployment. Afghanistan. Marcus's unit had been working with a K-9 team, and Havoc was a 3-year-old German Shepherd. 90 pounds of muscle, intelligence, and loyalty wrapped in a coat of black and tan fur. Havoc's handler, a kid from Oklahoma named Patterson, had been killed by an IED on a routine patrol. Marcus was there when it happened. Watched the light go out of Patterson's eyes while Havoc whined and pawed at his handler's body, not understanding why the man who fed him and praised him and slept beside him wouldn't wake up. The dog was supposed to be reassigned. That's protocol. But Havoc wouldn't work with anyone else. Wouldn't eat. Wouldn't follow commands. Just sat by Patterson's empty bunk and waited for a man who was never coming back. So Marcus sat with him, night after night in that dusty forward operating base. Didn't say much, just sat there. Let the dog know he wasn't alone. And slowly, over weeks, Havoc started responding. Started eating again. started following Marcus on patrols, started sleeping at the foot of Marcus's bunk instead of Patterson's. When Marcus got his discharge papers, he made a phone call, called in favors, cut through red tape. And when he left Afghanistan for the last time, Havoc left with him. Now they lived together in that quiet house on Maple Ridge Drive. Marcus worked as a security consultant. Boring corporate stuff mostly. Risk assessment, vulnerability audits, the kind of work that paid well and let him sleep in his own bed every night. Havoc had officially retired from military service, but you can't retire instinct, can't retire training that's been drilled into muscle memory through thousands of repetitions. Every morning, Marcus woke at 5:30. Not because he set an alarm, just because his body knew. He'd let Havoc out into the fenced backyard. The dog would do a perimeter check, nose to the ground, same as he'd done on patrol in Kandahar. Then they'd run, 5 miles through the neighborhood while it was still dark and quiet. The neighbors who were early risers got used to seeing them. The tall, quiet man and his big German shepherd moving in perfect sync. Some of them waved. Marcus always waved back, polite, friendly, but distant. He didn't do block parties, didn't hang out for beers on Friday nights. But here's what those neighbors didn't notice. The security cameras hidden in the eaves of Marcus's house. Professional grade, night vision, motion activated, covering every angle of approach. They didn't notice that his windows were reinforced, that his doors had commercial-grade deadbolts, that his garage was always locked and you could never quite see inside. They didn't notice that Marcus never parked in the driveway, always in the garage. Because license plates can be tracked. They didn't notice that he varied his running route every day, that he never established a predictable pattern. They didn't notice that Havoc wasn't just a pet, that the dog's ears were always moving, always tracking, always assessing. Old habits die hard, and paranoia keeps you alive. But someone was noticing. Someone was watching very carefully. His name was Tyler Brennan, and he was watching Marcus's house from a white panel van parked 2 streets over. Had been watching for 2 weeks now. Tyler was 32, with the kind of face that looked trustworthy until you really looked at his eyes. Those eyes were dead. Shark eyes. The eyes of a man who'd learned early that the world was divided into predators and prey, and he knew which one he wanted to be. Tyler had been in the burglary business for 8 years, had a system, a good one. He didn't hit houses randomly, didn't smash and grab like some desperate junkie. No, Tyler was professional. He researched, he planned, he watched, and he'd learned that military guys, especially the ones who'd been in special operations, they kept good stuff in their homes. Weapons, cash, high-end electronics. They were trained to be self-reliant, which meant they didn't trust banks with all their money. They kept go-bags ready. They had valuables that couldn't be easily traced. Plus, they were predictable, routine-oriented. You watch them long enough, you learn their patterns. And a man living alone? Even easier. Tyler had 2 guys with him, his crew, Mick Paulson and Deacon Wright. Mick was the driver, 28 years old, skinny. Nervous energy that never stopped. He had a meth habit he said he'd quit, but everyone knew he hadn't. Mick was good with locks, though. Could pick a deadbolt in under 30 seconds. Could bypass alarm systems if they weren't too sophisticated. He'd done 6 months in county for possession, got out, and went right back to the life because what else was he going to do? Work at Walmart? Deacon was the muscle. 35. Thick through the chest and shoulders. He'd done real time. 4 years in state prison for armed robbery. He'd beaten a man half to death during a bar fight before that. Deacon didn't talk much, just watched everything with these cold, calculating eyes. He carried a gun, a 9mm Glock that he'd bought off the street. Tyler didn't like guns on jobs, but Deacon insisted, said it was insurance. "That's him," Mick said from the driver's seat, watching through binoculars as Marcus returned from his morning run. "Same time as always, 5:30 out, 6:15 back, like clockwork." Tyler nodded, making notes on his phone. Marcus disappeared into his garage. The door rolled down behind him. "You see any sign of the dog?" Tyler asked. "Not today. Probably inside already." "Big dog," Deacon said from the back seat. His voice was a low rumble. "German Shepherd." "So what?" Tyler said. "Dogs are easy. Toss them some meat with sleeping pills, or just avoid them. We go in when he's asleep. The dog's probably locked in a room somewhere." They'd been watching for 14 days now, had Marcus's whole routine mapped out. He ran every morning, came back, showered, left for work around 8, came home around 6, ate dinner. Lights out by 10:30. Alone, always alone, no girlfriend, no visitors except for a lawn service every other Wednesday. Tyler had done his research beyond just surveillance. He'd run Marcus's license plate through a contact at the DMV. Marcus Webb, 34, honorable discharge from the Army, current employment listed as security consultant with a firm downtown, clean record, no arrests, not even a speeding ticket. What Tyler didn't know, what his DMV contact couldn't tell him, was that Marcus's service record was classified. That security consultant was the civilian term for a man who'd spent 12 years learning 100 different ways to kill someone with his bare hands. That the equipment in Marcus's garage wasn't just camping gear and lawn equipment. "I'm telling you, this is the one," Tyler said, watching the house. Military guys are trained to keep their emotions in check. They don't panic, which means when we come in fast and hard, he'll probably just comply. Give us what we want to avoid trouble. They're taught to assess threats and respond proportionally. 3 of us, one of him? He'll see the odds and make the smart choice. Mick nodded, though he looked uncertain. "What about the dog, though?" "I told you, dogs are easy." But Deacon was staring at the house with an expression that Tyler couldn't quite read. "I don't know, man. Something feels off." "Off how?" "Just off. Look at that place. Look at how clean it is. No mess, no clutter. You ever see him put out trash?" Tyler thought about it. "No, actually, no. Because he's careful, real careful, and that dog. I've done time with guys who had dogs like that. Military dogs. They're not pets. Man, they're weapons." "You getting scared, Deacon?" Tyler said, his voice mocking. "Big, tough guy scared of a puppy?" Deacon's eyes went cold. "I'm not scared. I'm being smart. There's a difference. We've been over this. We go in at night, late, like 3 a.m. He'll be dead asleep. We're in and out in 15 minutes. He's got a home office, probably keeps cash, maybe weapons we can sell. We grab what we can carry and we're gone before he even figures out what's happening." "And if he wakes up?" Mick asked. Tyler reached into his jacket and pulled out a tactical baton. Collapsed. It was 8 inches. Extended. It was 24 inches of solid steel. "Then we convince him to stay down. I don't want to hurt anybody, but we're not leaving empty-handed either." They watched the house as the sun climbed higher. Watched Marcus's garage door stay closed all day. Watched the quiet street where nothing ever happened. "Tomorrow night," Tyler said finally. "We go tomorrow night, 2:45 a.m. That's the sweet spot. Deep sleep. If he takes any kind of sleep aid, it'll be at peak effectiveness. We'll park 3 streets over. Walk in. No flashlights until we're inside. Mick, you get us through the door. Deacon, you watch the stairs in case he wakes up. I'll hit the office and the main bedroom. 15 minutes maximum. Mick nodded nervously. Deacon said nothing, just stared at that quiet house with those cold, calculating eyes. What none of them knew, what they couldn't possibly know, was that Marcus's security system had already logged their van, had captured their faces through its sophisticated cameras, had flagged them as a potential threat because they'd been parked in surveillance positions 6 different times over 2 weeks. Marcus had noticed them on day 3. He just hadn't decided what to do about it yet. The night of November 17th started like any other night in Marcus Webb's quiet life. He'd come home from work at 6:15, made himself dinner, grilled chicken, brown rice, steamed broccoli. The same meal he ate 4 nights a week, because nutrition was fuel and fuel kept you operational. He'd eaten while watching the news, Havoc lying at his feet, the dog's chin resting on his boot. At 8:30, Marcus went through his nightly routine, checked every door, every window, tested the locks, reviewed the security camera feeds on his phone. The street was quiet. A few neighbors coming home late. Mrs. Patterson from 2 doors down walking her little terrier. Normal, peaceful, boring. He liked boring. At 9:45, he let Havoc out one last time. The dog did his business, then his perimeter check. Nose to the ground, ears up, circling the fence line. Marcus watched him from the back door. Havoc's body language told him everything. Relaxed. No threats. All clear. They went upstairs together. Marcus's bedroom was at the end of the hall. Spartan. A queen bed with military corners. A nightstand with a lamp and a book he was halfway through. A dresser. That's it. No pictures on the walls, no decorations, just functional space. Havoc's bed was on the floor next to Marcus's bed, a large cushion that the dog had claimed as his territory. But here's the thing about Havoc. He never actually slept in that bed. He'd lay there for maybe an hour, then he'd get up and position himself in the doorway. Always the doorway, where he could see the hall, where he could hear the stairs, where he could protect his handler, because that's what he was trained to do. That's what he'd always do. Marcus changed into sleep clothes, basketball shorts, old army t-shirt. He set his phone on the nightstand, plugged in to charge. He kept his tactical flashlight within arm's reach, not because he was paranoid, just because he was prepared. There's a difference. He set his internal clock for 5:30 a.m. and closed his eyes. Within 5 minutes, his breathing had deepened. His heart rate had slowed. He was asleep, but not the way most people sleep. Marcus had learned in Delta to sleep light, to keep part of his brain active, monitoring for threats. You develop that skill when you've slept in places where relaxing completely could get you killed. The house settled into its nighttime sounds, the furnace kicking on, the refrigerator humming downstairs, the wind brushing tree branches against the siding, Havoc's steady breathing from the doorway. Outside, the neighborhood went dark. Streetlights cast their amber glow. A car passed occasionally. By midnight, even that stopped. By 1 a.m., Maple Ridge Drive was silent and still. By 2:30 a.m., it was dead. That's when the white panel van rolled up 3 streets over, its headlights off, moving slow and quiet. Tyler killed the engine. They sat there for a moment, all 3 of them, letting their eyes adjust to the darkness. Radio silence from here. Tyler whispered. No phones, no talking unless absolutely necessary. We walk in. We walk out. 15 minutes. Understood? Mick nodded, his hands shaking slightly as he pulled on black gloves. Deacon just grunted, checking his Glock one more time before tucking it into his waistband. They moved through the darkness like shadows. Tyler had mapped the route. Through the Hendersons' backyard, along the tree line where the streetlights couldn't reach, coming up on Marcus's house from the side. They wore dark clothes, soft-soled shoes. Mick carried his lockpick set. Tyler had his baton and a small LED flashlight. Deacon had his gun and a crowbar, just in case. The houses around them were dark and silent. No dogs barking, no porch lights flicking on, just the sound of their own breathing and the soft crunch of their footsteps on the cold grass. They reached Marcus's house at 2:43 a.m. Back door, Tyler whispered. It's got better cover from the street. They moved around to the rear of the house, staying close to the walls. The backyard was fenced, but the gate wasn't locked. Why would it be? This was a safe neighborhood. Nothing bad ever happened here. Mick knelt by the back door, his flashlight held between his teeth as he examined the lock. Deadbolt. Good quality, but nothing he hadn't seen before. He selected 2 picks from his set and went to work. His hands were steadier now. This was familiar. This was what he was good at. 30 seconds. That's all it took. The deadbolt slid back with a soft click that sounded like thunder in the quiet night. Tyler put his hand on the doorknob, turned it slowly. The door opened without a sound. Marcus kept his hinges oiled. Of course he did. They stepped inside. The kitchen was dark. Not pitch black, because a small light over the stove provided a faint glow, just enough to see shapes and outlines. They could make out the counter, the table, the doorway that led to the living room. Tyler pulled out his flashlight, keeping the beam low, and pointed at the floor. He'd studied the layout online. Tax records had a floor plan. Ground floor was kitchen, living room, dining room, and a home office. Second floor was 3 bedrooms and 2 baths. Marcus used the master bedroom and had converted one of the other bedrooms into his office upstairs. Mick, you stay here. Tyler breathed, his voice barely audible. Watch the kitchen. If he comes down, you signal us. Deacon, you're on the stairs. Make sure he doesn't surprise us. I'm going up. Office first, then I'll check his bedroom. Deacon moved to the staircase, positioning himself at the bottom step where he could see both up and down. His hand rested on the grip of his Glock. Tyler started up the stairs, testing each step before putting his full weight on it. No creaks, no groans. The house was solid, well built. What Tyler didn't know, what none of them knew, was that at 2:43 a.m. and 27 seconds, when that back door opened, Marcus's security system had registered the breach. Silent alarm. No sirens, no flashing lights. Just a notification that pinged to Marcus's phone on his nightstand, and to the monitoring company that would automatically dispatch police in 3 minutes if the alarm wasn't disabled with the correct code. Marcus's eyes opened, not slowly, not groggily, just open, awake, alert. His hand moved to his phone. He saw the alert. Backdoor breach, kitchen. He pulled up the security camera app. Night vision feed showed 3 figures, 3 men in his house, 1 in the kitchen, 1 at his stairs, 1 coming up. His heart rate didn't spike. His breathing didn't change. 12 years of training had conditioned him for this exact moment. The moment when chaos erupts and you have exactly 1 second to decide if you're going to survive. He looked at Havoc. The dog was already standing in the doorway, his body rigid, his ears forward. He'd heard them. Of course he'd heard them. Havoc could hear a mouse fart from 50 yards away. Marcus held up one hand. A signal. Havoc knew it. Stay, wait, not yet. The dog froze, every muscle coiled, waiting for the command that would unleash him. Marcus moved off his bed without a sound. No time to get dressed. No time for anything except assessment and action. He grabbed his tactical flashlight. 1,200 lumens, bright enough to blind, heavy enough to use as a weapon. He moved to the side of his bedroom door, pressing himself against the wall where he couldn't be seen from the hallway. He pulled up the camera feed again. The one in the kitchen was still there, shifting his weight nervously. The one at the stairs was looking up, watching his partner climb, and the one climbing was at the top now, standing in Marcus's hallway, just 10 feet from the office door. Marcus made a decision. He wasn't calling out a warning, wasn't yelling, "I've got a gun," or "Get out of my house," because here's what most people don't understand about violence. The person who acts first usually wins. The person who hesitates usually dies. And Marcus Webb had stopped hesitating a long time ago. Tyler reached the office door. It was closed. He turned the knob slowly and pushed it open. His flashlight beam swept the room. Desk, computer, filing cabinet. Bingo! This was what he'd come for. He stepped inside, moving to the desk, started opening drawers, looking for cash, keys, anything valuable. The computer was password protected, useless. But the drawers, there had to be something. That's when he heard it. Behind him, in the hallway, a sound that made his blood run cold. A growl, low, deep. The kind of growl that doesn't come from a pet. It comes from something wild, something predatory. Tyler spun around, his flashlight beam catching 2 eyes in the darkness. Reflective, glowing. And then the eyes moved, rushed forward, and Tyler's brain finally processed what he was seeing. The dog, the German Shepherd. 90 pounds of muscle and teeth and fury coming at him like a missile. Tyler screamed, tried to raise his baton, tried to defend himself. But Havoc had been trained by the best handlers in the United States military, had been deployed in active combat zones, had taken down insurgents armed with AK-47s. Tyler Brennan with his baton didn't stand a chance. Havoc hit him center mass, his full weight slamming into Tyler's chest. The impact drove Tyler backward into the desk. He went down hard, his head cracking against the wooden edge. The baton flew from his hand, clattering across the floor, and then Havoc was on him. Not biting, not yet, just holding him down. Jaws inches from Tyler's throat. That growl intensifying. A promise, a warning. Move and I end you. Tyler froze. Every muscle locked. He could feel the dog's breath on his face, could see the teeth, could smell the animal musk. His flashlight had fallen, its beam pointing at the ceiling, casting crazy shadows on the walls. "Deacon!" Tyler tried to scream, but his voice came out as a strangled whisper. "Deacon! Help! The dog! The—" Downstairs, Deacon heard the commotion, heard the crash, heard Tyler's voice, panicked and afraid. He pulled his Glock, started up the stairs, taking them 2 at a time. That was his second mistake. His first was coming into this house at all, because Marcus was waiting for him. Deacon reached the top of the stairs, his gun raised, sweeping left and right, trying to find the threat. He saw the office door open, saw his flashlight beam bouncing around inside, saw movement. "Tyler!" he called out. "Tyler, where—" He never finished the sentence. Marcus came out of the darkness like a ghost. He'd been pressed against the wall next to the landing, invisible in the shadows. Now he moved with a speed that defied physics. His left hand shot out, grabbed Deacon's gun hand, and twisted, hard. The way you disarm someone when you've done it 1,000 times. When it's muscle memory. When you don't think, you just do. Deacon's wrist bent at an unnatural angle. He howled in pain. The Glock fell from his grip, hit the floor, skittered down the hallway. Marcus didn't stop. His right hand came up, the tactical flashlight gripped like a hammer, and he brought it down on Deacon's collarbone. Not full strength. Marcus didn't want to kill him, just disable him. The bone cracked. Deacon screamed and dropped to his knees. Marcus kicked him in the chest, a precise strike that drove him backward, sending him tumbling down the stairs in a tangle of limbs and curses. Deacon hit the landing halfway down, tried to grab the railing, missed, and continued his rolling fall until he crashed into a heap at the bottom. He wasn't unconscious, but he wasn't getting up either. He lay there, gasping, his collarbone shattered, his wrist screaming, his entire body a symphony of pain. In the kitchen, Mick heard everything. The crashes, the screams, the sounds of violence happening fast and brutal in the darkness above him. Every instinct told him to run, to get out, to leave Tyler and Deacon and save himself. He bolted for the back door, made it 3 steps before the kitchen lights blazed on, blinding him after the darkness. He stumbled, raising his hands to shield his eyes. Marcus's voice cut through the chaos. Cold, calm, absolutely in control. "Stop moving!" Mick froze, slowly lowered his hands, saw the man standing in the kitchen doorway. Tall, lean, wearing nothing but shorts and a t-shirt, holding a flashlight in one hand. But it was his eyes that made Mick's bladder want to let go. Those grey eyes that looked at him without anger, without fear, without anything. Just cold calculation. "On the ground," Marcus said. "Face down, hands behind your head. Do it now." Mick dropped like a stone, pressed his face against the cold tile, laced his fingers behind his head. He was crying, couldn't help it, tears and snot running down his face. "Please don't hurt me," he sobbed. "Please, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, please." "Shut up," Marcus said. Upstairs, Tyler was still on the floor with Havoc standing over him. The dog hadn't moved, hadn't bitten. Just held him there with the implicit threat of violence that was somehow worse than the violence itself. Marcus grabbed zip ties from a kitchen drawer, always kept them handy. He secured Mick's wrists behind his back, then his ankles, pulled them tight. The kid whimpered but didn't resist. Then Marcus walked to Deacon, who was still at the bottom of the stairs, groaning. He zip-tied him too, even though the man wasn't going anywhere with that collarbone. Marcus picked up the Glock from where it had fallen, ejected the magazine, cleared the chamber, set it on the kitchen counter, now harmless. Then he walked upstairs to his office. Tyler saw him coming, saw the man who lived in this house, the man he'd thought would be an easy target. And in that moment, Tyler understood that he'd made a catastrophic error in judgment. "Havoc. Off," Marcus said quietly. The dog immediately stepped back, though his eyes never left Tyler. He sat on his haunches, at attention, waiting for the next command. Marcus looked down at Tyler. "Roll over. Hands behind your back." Tyler complied. He had no fight left. Marcus zip-tied him, then hauled him to his feet and walked him downstairs, depositing him on the kitchen floor next to his partners. 3 men, 3 professional burglars. Neutralized in less than 4 minutes? Marcus checked his phone. The police had been dispatched. He could already hear sirens in the distance getting closer. He looked at the 3 men on his floor, looked at Havoc, who sat proudly, his tail wagging slowly, knowing he'd done his job perfectly. And Marcus allowed himself the smallest smile. "You boys," he said quietly, "picked the wrong house." The sirens were getting louder. Marcus could track them by sound. 2 units, maybe 3, coming from different directions. Response time was good, under 4 minutes from the silent alarm trigger. He made a mental note to send a thank you to the monitoring company. Tyler, Mick, and Deacon lay on his kitchen floor like caught fish, zip-tied, defeated. The arrogance that had brought them here had evaporated, replaced by the cold reality of consequences. Tyler's face was bleeding where he'd hit the desk. Deacon's collarbone was swelling, turning purple under his shirt. Mick was still crying, his nose running, making these pathetic sniffling sounds that echoed in the silent kitchen. Marcus stood over them, his phone in one hand, Havoc sitting calmly at his side. The dog's tongue lolled out slightly. He looked almost happy. This was the most excitement he'd had since Afghanistan. This was what he was bred for, what he was trained for. "Here's how this is going to work," Marcus said, his voice conversational, almost friendly. "The police are about 30 seconds out. When they get here, you're going to be very calm, very cooperative. You're not going to claim I assaulted you. You're not going to make up stories about how you were invited in. You're going to tell the truth, because if you don't, I've got security footage of your entire break-in from 4 different angles. High definition, night vision. I've got you picking my lock. I've got you entering my home. I've got all of it." Tyler's eyes widened. "You were recording?" "I'm always recording." That's illegal. You can't record people without—" "Wrong." Marcus cut him off. "In North Carolina, I can record anything I want on my own property. It's a one-party consent state, and I'm the party. I consent. You want to file a complaint about it? Be my guest. But somehow I don't think your lawyer is going to want to argue that your illegal home invasion should be thrown out, because I documented it too thoroughly." Deacon groaned from the floor. "I think you broke my collarbone." "I did break your collarbone." Marcus confirmed. "You came into my home with a gun. I used appropriate force to neutralize the threat. That's going to be my statement. That's going to be the truth. And every lawyer in this state is going to agree I was well within my rights." Blue and red lights began to flash through the kitchen windows. Car doors slammed. Marcus heard the crunch of boots on his driveway. Multiple officers. He'd expected that. "Stay," he said to Havoc. The dog remained sitting, his eyes fixed on the 3 intruders. Marcus went to his front door, opened it before they could knock. 3 officers stood on his porch, weapons drawn but pointed down. The lead officer was a woman in her 40s, her nameplate reading Morrison. She had sharp eyes that took in everything at once. Marcus, his state of dress, the complete calm on his face. "Marcus Webb?" she asked. "That's me. I'm the homeowner. I've got 3 intruders secured in my kitchen. No one's injured seriously. One has a broken collarbone, one has some facial trauma. The third is intact." Morrison's eyebrows went up. "You secured them?" "Yes, ma'am." "Are you armed right now?" "No, ma'am. I have a handgun on my kitchen counter. It belonged to one of the intruders. I've cleared it. Magazine is out, chamber is empty." Morrison holstered her weapon. The 2 officers with her, younger guys, kept theirs ready but relaxed their postures. "Can we come in?" "Please do." Marcus led them to the kitchen. The 3 officers stopped in the doorway, taking in the scene. 3 grown men, zip-tied on the floor, a large German shepherd sitting at attention, a kitchen that looked completely normal except for the criminals lying on its floor. "Jesus," one of the younger officers muttered. Morrison walked forward, kneeling to check Deacon's injuries. "Sir, can you tell me your name?" Deacon mumbled something that might have been his name. "He needs medical attention," Morrison said, looking up at her partners. "Call for EMS, non-emergency, but let them know possible fractured clavicle." She turned to Marcus. "Want to walk me through what happened?" Marcus did. Calmly, precisely. He laid out the timeline, the alarm at 2:43 a.m., checking the security feed, seeing 3 intruders, making the tactical decision to neutralize them rather than barricade himself in his room, the confrontation with the first intruder, his dog subduing the leader, disarming the one with the gun, securing all 3. Morrison listened without interrupting. When he finished, she said, "You said you have security footage. 4 cameras, all digital, cloud backup. I can send you the files right now if you give me an email address." "That would be helpful." She studied him. "You prior military, Mr. Webb?" "Yes, ma'am. Army. 12 years." "What did you do in the Army?" Marcus met her eyes. "I did security work." It wasn't technically a lie. Delta Force did provide security for the entire country, just not in the way most people thought of security work. Morrison nodded slowly. She'd been a cop long enough to know when someone was giving her the sanitized version. "Security work. Right. Well, your security work tonight probably saved your life. Most people would have hidden and hoped for the best." "Most people aren't trained to respond to threats, ma'am." 2 EMTs arrived, checked over the 3 intruders. Deacon was loaded onto a stretcher. Tyler and Mick were hauled to their feet, their zip ties cut and replaced with handcuffs. They were read their rights. They were walked out to separate patrol cars. And through it all, Tyler kept staring at Marcus. Not with anger, not with hatred, with something closer to disbelief. Like he still couldn't process how thoroughly he'd miscalculated. As they were loading Tyler into a patrol car, he called out, "What are you, man? What the hell are you?" Marcus didn't answer, just stood on his porch, watching. Havoc sat beside him, tail wagging. Morrison stayed behind to take his formal statement. She sat up at his kitchen table, and Marcus made coffee while he talked. He walked her through every detail again. Showed her the security footage on his laptop. Let her see the 3 men entering his home. Let her watch Havoc take down Tyler. Let her watch him disarm Deacon. "That's remarkable," she said, watching the footage. "Your dog, he's trained." "Military working dog, retired. He was my partner on my last deployment." "And he just knew what to do?" "He's been doing it his whole life, ma'am. Only difference is tonight the enemy wore different clothes." Morrison finished her coffee, closed her notebook. "You'll need to come down to the station tomorrow. Give a formal recorded statement. Bring the video files. But I'm going to tell you right now, Mr. Webb, you're not going to face any charges. This is the clearest case of self-defense and defense of property I have seen in 20 years. "I appreciate that." She stood, then paused. "Those men. We ran their IDs. They're part of a crew that's been hitting houses across 3 counties. Tyler Brennan has 7 prior arrests. Deacon Wright did 4 years in prison for armed robbery. They're not amateurs. They've done this before. They won't do it again." Marcus said quietly, "No." Morrison agreed. "They won't." After the police left, After the crime scene unit had photographed everything and collected the evidence and finally cleared out, Marcus found himself alone in his house at 4:30 in the morning. The adrenaline was finally starting to wear off, leaving behind a bone-deep exhaustion. He let Havoc out into the backyard, watched the dog do his business, then trot back to the door, looking proud of himself. Marcus scratched behind his ears. "Good boy," he said quietly. "You're a very good boy." Havoc's tail wagged harder. They went upstairs together. Marcus knew he wouldn't sleep, knew his body was still jacked up on combat chemicals that would take hours to dissipate. But he lay down anyway, staring at the ceiling, processing. 3 men had broken into his home. 3 men had threatened his life, and he'd stopped them without firing a shot. Without seriously injuring anyone beyond what was necessary. The old Marcus, the Delta Force operator, might have been disappointed by that, might have felt he'd shown too much restraint. But this Marcus, the civilian trying to build a normal life, felt something different. Relief, pride, not in the violence, but in the control, in the discipline, in the ability to do exactly what was needed and nothing more. He pulled out his phone, scrolled through his contacts, found a name he hadn't called in 8 months. Robert Chen, former Delta. They'd served together for 6 years. Chen had gotten out 2 years before Marcus, moved back to California, opened a gym. Marcus sent a text. "You awake?" 30 seconds later, his phone rang. "Marcus, you okay?" Chen's voice was alert, concerned. Once a brother, always a brother. "I'm fine. Had some excitement tonight. 3 guys broke into my house." "Jesus, you hurt?" "No, they are. Well, one of them is. I broke his collarbone." A pause. Then Chen laughed. "Man, I would have paid money to see that. They picked the wrong house?" They really did. "Chen, I need to ask you something. When you got out, when you started your civilian life, did you ever feel like you were waiting?" "Waiting for what?" "For it to follow you home, for the violence, for the chaos, like no matter how far you ran, it would find you." Chen was quiet for a moment. "Yeah," he said finally. "Every day for the first year. I'd wake up at 3 a.m. convinced someone was in my house. I'd check the locks 5 times before bed. I couldn't relax, couldn't turn it off. And now? Now I know that the violence doesn't follow us, Marcus. We carry it with us. It's in us. It's part of who we are. But that's not a bad thing. Tonight proved that. Those men came into your home expecting to find a victim. They found a warrior instead. You protected yourself. You protected your home. That's not the violence following you. That's you being ready for the world as it actually is." Marcus absorbed that. "Thanks, man." "Anytime. Listen, you should come out to California. Visit for a week. I'll put you to work at the gym. Good money in teaching rich people how to throw a punch." "Maybe I will. And Marcus, I'm glad you're okay. Tell Havoc he's a good boy. He knows." They hung up. Marcus finally felt himself starting to relax. Chen was right. This wasn't the war following him home. This was just life. Real life, where bad things happen and you either deal with them or you don't. He'd dealt with them. The sun was starting to rise when Marcus finally fell asleep. Havoc was in his usual spot in the doorway. Guardian, protector, friend. 2 days later, Marcus sat in a small conference room at the police station, giving his formal video statement. Detective Sarah Park conducted the interview. She was thorough, professional, asking the same questions 3 different ways to make sure his story was consistent. It was. Because it was true. Afterward, she walked him out to the lobby. The DA's office has officially declined to press any charges against you, she said. It's ruled as justified defense of habitation. You're clear. What about them? Marcus asked. Tyler Brennan is being charged with breaking and entering, attempted burglary, and conspiracy. Deacon Wright has the same charges plus possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. Mick Paulson is getting a deal if he testifies against the other two. They're all looking at significant prison time. Marcus nodded. Detective, you mentioned they'd been hitting other houses. Do you have a list of their victims? Park's expression shifted. Why? Because I'd like to know if any of them were veterans, if any of them were people like me. She studied him for a long moment. Then she pulled out her phone, scrolled through some files. Actually, yes. 4 of their 9 confirmed burglaries were military households, 2 active duty, 2 retired. Can I have their names, their contact information? That's not usually something we give out. Please. Marcus's voice was quiet but intense. These people went through something traumatic. I went through the same thing. Maybe I can help. Park considered this. Finally, she nodded. Let me make some calls. If they consent to being contacted, I'll pass along your information. 3 days later, Marcus got a phone call from a number he didn't recognize. He answered cautiously. Is this Marcus Webb? The voice was older. Male, rough with emotion. Yes, sir. My name is Thomas Brenner. I'm a Marine, retired. Detective Park said you wanted to talk to me. Marcus sat up straighter. Mr. Brenner, yes. I understand you were a victim of a home invasion a few months ago. The same men who hit your house tried to hit mine last week. Detective Park told me. Said you stopped them. Said you hurt one of them pretty bad. I did what was necessary, sir. A long pause. Then, I wish I'd done the same. When they came into my house, I froze. I'm 73 years old. I fought in Vietnam. I've seen combat. But when those men came through my door, I froze. They beat me, put me in the hospital for a week, and I've been ashamed of it every day since. Marcus felt something tighten in his chest. Mr. Brenner, you have nothing to be ashamed of. You're not 25 anymore. You're not equipped for that kind of fight. The fact that you survived is what matters. I don't feel like I survived. I feel like I failed. Like all that training, all those years of service didn't mean anything when it counted. Sir, can I come visit you? I'd like to talk, face to face. Another pause. You'd do that? Yes, sir, I would. Thomas Brenner lived in a small house on the other side of town. Marcus drove there the next afternoon, Havoc in the back seat. When Brenner opened the door, Marcus saw an old man with white hair, a stooped posture, and eyes that had seen too much. But he also saw a Marine, saw it in the way he stood, in the set of his jaw, in the American flag flying on his porch. Mr. Brenner? Marcus said, extending his hand. It's an honor to meet you. They sat in Brenner's living room, surrounded by photos of his service. Black and white pictures of a young man in uniform, medals in shadow boxes, a folded flag from a brother who hadn't made it home. They talked for 2 hours. Marcus told his story. Brenner told his. And somewhere in that conversation something healed. Not completely, not permanently, but enough. When Marcus stood to leave, Brenner walked him to the door. The old Marine stood a little straighter now. His eyes were clearer. Thank you for coming. Brenner said, Thank you for your service, sir. And thank you for yours. Brenner looked down at Havoc, who sat patiently at Marcus's side. That's a good dog you have there. The best, sir. As Marcus drove away, he thought about what Chen had said, about carrying the violence with you, about being ready for the world as it actually is. Maybe that was his purpose now, not to fight wars overseas, but to help the warriors who came home, to be ready, to be an example, to show that the training never leaves you, but it doesn't have to define you either. His phone buzzed. A text from Detective Park. 2 more victims want to talk to you, and there's something else. The DA wants to meet with you. They're building a larger case against an organized burglary ring. They want your help. Marcus read the message twice. Then he looked at Havoc in the rearview mirror. The dog's ears were up, his eyes bright. What do you think, boy? You up for a little more work? Havoc barked once, short, sharp. Affirmative. Marcus smiled and turned the car toward home. The war had followed him after all. But this time, he was ready. The video went viral on a Tuesday morning. Marcus had no idea it was even online until his phone started blowing up with calls from numbers he didn't recognize. Text messages from people he'd served with years ago. Emails from reporters. His quiet life, the one he'd carefully constructed after leaving Delta Force, shattered in the span of about 4 hours. The security footage had leaked. Not the full thing, just a 45-second clip. It showed Havoc taking down Tyler Brennan in Marcus's office, showed the speed, the precision, the absolute controlled violence of a military working dog doing exactly what he was trained to do. The video was grainy, black and white night vision, but that somehow made it more dramatic, more real. Someone had posted it with the caption, "Burglars break into retired soldier's home. His canine partner had other ideas." Within 6 hours, it had 3 million views. By the next morning, it was on the news. Local stations first, then regional, then national. CNN ran a segment. Fox News did a piece. Even the late-night shows made jokes about it. "Note to criminals," one host said. "If you're going to rob a house, maybe check if it belongs to a guy who makes John Wick look like a kindergarten teacher." Marcus hated every second of it. He sat in his living room, curtains drawn, phone on silent, watching the circus unfold online. People were treating him like some kind of hero, like he'd done something extraordinary. He hadn't. He'd just protected his home, done what any person with his training would do. The attention felt wrong, invasive. "They don't get it," he said to Havoc, who lay at his feet, completely unbothered by his newfound internet fame. "I'm not a hero. I'm just a guy who didn't want to get robbed." Havoc yawned, but the attention kept coming. A producer from a national morning show called, wanted him to fly to New York for an interview. A publisher emailed about writing a book. Someone from Hollywood, an actual Hollywood agent, left a voicemail about film rights. Marcus deleted everything. Then Detective Park called. Her number he recognized. He answered. "Marcus, it's Sarah Park. Have you seen the news?" "I've seen enough of it." "Listen, I know this isn't what you want, but there's an opportunity here, a real one. The chief wants to meet with you. So does the mayor. They want to do a press conference about home security and veteran preparedness. They want to use your story to help other people. I don't want to be part of a press conference." "I understand. But Marcus, in the last 24 hours, we've gotten 47 calls from citizens reporting suspicious activity in their neighborhoods." 47. People are paying attention. They're being vigilant. Your story is making people safer. Marcus was quiet for a moment. "What about the other victims? The ones who got hit before me? Are they getting attention?" "Some. Thomas Brenner did a newspaper interview. He talked about what happened to him, about how he felt like he'd failed. The response has been incredible. Other veterans are reaching out to him. He's not alone anymore. That changed something in Marcus. If this circus, this unwanted attention, was helping people like Thomas Brenner feel less isolated, less ashamed, maybe it was worth enduring. "What do they want me to do?" he asked finally. 3 days later, Marcus stood in front of a room full of reporters at the police station. He wore a simple button-down shirt and jeans. Havoc sat at his side, wearing his old service vest. The dog seemed to understand the gravity of the moment. He sat perfectly still, his eyes scanning the room, assessing threats even here. The police chief, a woman named Patricia Hendricks, introduced him, talked about the home invasion, about Marcus's service, about the importance of community vigilance. Then it was Marcus's turn to speak. He approached the microphone, his hands clasped in front of him. Every instinct told him to run, to get out of this spotlight. But he thought about Thomas Brenner, about the other victims, about the 47 calls that had come in because people were finally paying attention. "My name is Marcus Webb," he began, his voice steady. "I'm a veteran. I served 12 years in the army. When I got out, I wanted peace. I wanted quiet. I wanted to be left alone." He paused, looking out at the sea of cameras and reporters. But peace doesn't mean being unprepared. It doesn't mean being vulnerable. What happened in my home last week wasn't about me being some kind of action hero. It was about me being ready, about having a plan, about understanding that bad things can happen anywhere, even in good neighborhoods. He gestured to Havoc. "This is Havoc. He's my partner. He was my partner overseas, and he's my partner now. He didn't attack those men because he's vicious. He protected me because that's what he's trained to do. That's what partners do. They watch your back." A reporter raised her hand. "Mr. Webb, some people are saying your response was excessive, that you could have just called 911 and hidden. What do you say to that?" Marcus met her eyes. "I did call 911. My security system did it automatically. But hiding and hoping isn't a strategy. It's a gamble. Those men were armed. They were violent. They'd hurt people before. If I'd hidden, if I'd waited, there's a very real chance I wouldn't be standing here today. I made the choice to act, to use my training. And I'd make the same choice again." Another reporter. "What do you want people to take away from this?" "I want people to understand that being a victim isn't inevitable. You can prepare, you can train, you can make your home harder to break into, you can have a plan for what you'll do if someone does break in. You don't have to be Delta Force, you don't need a military dog, you just need to think about your safety before something happens, not after." The press conference lasted 30 minutes. When it was over, Marcus felt drained, exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with physical exertion. But as he was leaving, a young woman approached him. She was in her late 20s, wearing an Army veteran ball cap. "Mr. Webb, I'm Corporal Jessica Torres. I served in Iraq. I was a convoy driver." "Thank you for your service," Marcus said automatically. "I wanted to tell you something. 2 months ago, someone tried to break into my apartment. I was home alone. I froze, just completely froze. They got in through my sliding door, stole my laptop, my grandmother's jewelry. I felt like such a failure, like all my training didn't matter." Marcus saw the pain in her eyes, recognized it immediately. "When I saw your video," she continued, "when I saw what you did, it didn't make me feel worse. It made me realize that freezing doesn't mean I'm weak. It means I wasn't prepared. So I took a self-defense class. I got better locks. I got a security system. And yesterday, I adopted a dog from the shelter, a German Shepherd mix. I named him Ranger." Her eyes were wet now. "You didn't just protect your home, Mr. Webb. You reminded people like me that we can protect ourselves, that it's okay to be ready. Thank you." She walked away before Marcus could respond. He stood there in the empty hallway, Havoc at his side, and felt something shift inside him. This wasn't about him anymore. It wasn't about the attention or the fame or the uncomfortable spotlight. It was about the Jessica Teresis of the world, the Thomas Brenners, the veterans who came home and felt lost, who felt like their training didn't matter anymore, who felt alone. Maybe this was his new mission, not fighting wars, not taking down terrorists, but helping warriors find their way home. His phone buzzed. A text from Detective Park. "The DA wants to meet with you tomorrow. They're moving forward with the larger case. They think Tyler's crew is connected to an organized ring that's been operating for 3 years. They want your help identifying patterns. Interested?" Marcus looked down at Havoc. The dog looked back up at him, his tail wagging slowly. "What do you think, boy? One more mission?" Havoc barked once. That was all the answer Marcus needed. 6 months changed everything. Marcus Webb's life, the quiet, predictable existence he'd built after leaving Delta Force, was gone. Not destroyed, just transformed into something he never expected. Something bigger than himself. It started small. A few weeks after the press conference, a local community center asked if he'd come speak to a group of veterans about home security. 20 people showed up. Marcus talked for 30 minutes about basic preparedness, door reinforcements, window locks, security systems, the importance of having a plan. But what struck him most was the conversation afterward. These veterans, men and women who'd served in Iraq and Afghanistan and places that didn't have names, they didn't just want to learn about locks and alarms. They wanted to talk about the transition home, about feeling vulnerable in ways they never had overseas, about the weird disconnect of being trained for war but feeling unprepared for suburban life. "It's like we learned to fight tanks," one guy said, "but nobody taught us how to deal with a door-to-door salesman who won't take no for an answer." Everyone laughed, but Marcus heard the truth underneath. These people felt out of place, felt like the skills that had defined them for years were suddenly useless. That's when the idea hit him. He was driving home that night. Havoc in the passenger seat when he pulled over and made a phone call. Robert Chen, his old Delta buddy in California. "Chen, I need your help with something." "Name it." "How hard would it be to start a non-profit?" 2 months later, Guardian Protocol was born. A non-profit organization dedicated to teaching home security, personal safety, and crisis response to veterans and their families. Marcus used his own money to get it started, rented a small office space, built a basic website, filed the paperwork. He expected maybe a dozen people to sign up for the first seminar. 83 people showed up. They came from 3 states, veterans from every branch, Army, Marines, Navy, Air Force. Some were recently discharged. Some had been out for 20 years. They came with their spouses, their kids, their parents. They filled the community center auditorium to capacity. Marcus stood at the front of the room, Havoc sitting calmly beside him, and looked out at all those faces, all those people who'd served, who'd sacrificed, who were now just trying to figure out how to live normal lives in a world that suddenly felt unstable. "Thank you all for coming," Marcus began. I'm not going to stand up here and pretend I have all the answers. I don't. 6 months ago, 3 men broke into my home. I stopped them. The video went viral. And suddenly everyone thinks I'm some kind of expert on everything. A few people chuckled. But here's what I do know. Every single person in this room has training, has skills, has experience that the average civilian doesn't have. We know how to assess threats. We know how to stay calm under pressure. We know how to act when things go wrong. That doesn't go away when you take off the uniform. It's still there. We just need to remember how to access it. Over the next 4 hours, Marcus and a team of volunteers he'd assembled, other veterans with specialties in different areas, ran them through scenarios. Home invasions, carjackings, active shooter situations, medical emergencies. They weren't training people to be soldiers. They were teaching people to be prepared civilians. And Havoc was the star of the show. Marcus demonstrated K9 commands, showed how a trained dog could be both a deterrent and a first line of defense, explained the difference between a pet and a working animal. At the end of the day, as people were filing out, a woman approached Marcus. She was in her early 30s, athletic build, dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. Something about her posture, the way she moved, told Marcus she was military before she even opened her mouth. Mr. Webb, I'm Sarah Chen, Army veteran, 101st Airborne. I served 3 tours in Afghanistan. Thank you for your service, Marcus said. Then he paused. Chen, any relation to Robert Chen? She smiled. He's my older brother. He told me about what you're doing here. Said I should check it out. Your brother's a good man. He is, and he was right about this. She gestured to the room. What you're building here, it's important. These people need this. I'm just trying to help. It's more than that. Her expression grew serious. Can I tell you something? Of course. 3 months ago, I was living in an apartment downtown. Around 2 a.m., I woke up to someone trying to break in through my balcony door. I'm a combat veteran. I've been shot at. I've returned fire. I've done things I can't talk about. But in that moment, I completely froze. Just locked up. Couldn't move. Couldn't think. The guy got scared and ran off, but I spent the rest of that night sitting in my closet with a kitchen knife, shaking. Marcus saw the shame in her eyes. The same shame he'd seen in Thomas Brenner, in Jessica Torres, in so many others. The next day I moved back in with my parents. I'm 32 years old, and I moved back home because I was too scared to live alone. I felt like such a failure, like all my training meant nothing. It doesn't mean nothing, Marcus said firmly. It means you're human. Combat training and civilian life are 2 different things. The contexts are different. The rules are different. Your brain knowing that and your body accepting it are 2 separate processes. That's what my therapist says. She gave a small smile. I've been working through it. And when I saw your story, when I saw what you did, it gave me hope. That maybe I'm not broken. Maybe I just need to reframe things. Relearn how to use what I already know. She reached into her bag and pulled out a photo. It showed her kneeling next to a large German Shepherd mix. The dog's tongue was out, its tail mid-wag, and Sarah was smiling, really smiling, for the first time since she'd approached him. This is Sergeant. I adopted him from a shelter 2 weeks ago. He's not trained like Havoc, not even close, but he's smart. He's loyal, and he makes me feel safe. I've been sleeping in my own apartment again. Actually sleeping. Not just sitting up all night waiting for something bad to happen. Marcus felt something tighten in his chest. This was why Guardian Protocol mattered. Not the headlines, not the viral videos. This, one veteran at a time, finding their way back to feeling safe in their own lives. Sarah, would you be interested in volunteering with us? We need people who understand what this transition is like, people who've been through it. Her eyes widened. Seriously. We're planning a seminar next month focused specifically on women veterans. The challenges are different. The threats are different. The psychology is different. We need someone who can speak to that authentically. I'd love to, thank you. Really, thank you. As she walked away, Marcus felt Havoc nudge his hand with his nose. He looked down at the dog, who was staring up at him with those intelligent eyes. I know, boy. We're doing good work. Havoc's tail wagged. Over the next 3 months, Guardian Protocol grew faster than Marcus could have imagined. They ran seminars twice a month, started offering private consultations for home security assessments, partnered with local law enforcement to provide training, even got a grant from the VA to expand their services. Sarah Chen became one of their most effective instructors. She led workshops on personal safety for women veterans, taught self-defense classes, shared her own story openly, vulnerably, and in doing so gave permission for others to share theirs. Marcus found himself doing something he never thought he would. He was building a community, not a team, not a unit, a community of people who understood each other, who'd walked similar paths, who were all just trying to figure out how to be okay. And then came the day that changed everything again. Marcus was in the Guardian Protocol office, reviewing applications for their next seminar, when Detective Park called. Marcus, I need to tell you something. The trial for Tyler Brennan and his crew starts next week. I know, I'm scheduled to testify. There's more. The DA's investigation uncovered something big. Tyler's crew wasn't just random burglars. They were part of a network. Organized crime. They were specifically targeting veterans' homes because they knew veterans often kept cash, weapons, and valuables. They had a list. Marcus, your name was on that list. So were 43 other veterans in this state. Marcus felt his blood run cold. 43? Yeah. And here's the thing. The DA wants to make this a RICO case, organized criminal enterprise. If they can prove it, everyone connected goes down. But they need testimony. They need victims willing to come forward. And they need someone to coordinate it all. Someone the other victims trust. You want me to reach out to them. I want you to help them understand that coming forward isn't about being a victim. It's about being a survivor. It's about making sure this doesn't happen to anyone else. You're good at that, Marcus. You've been doing it for months now. Marcus looked at the wall of his office. Photographs from their seminars. Veterans smiling. Learning, healing. Guardian Protocol had started as a way to teach people about locks and alarms. But it had become something bigger. A way for people to reclaim their power, their dignity, their sense of safety. I'll do it, he said. The trial began on a cold Monday morning in February. The courthouse was packed. Tyler Brennan, Deacon Wright, and 7 other defendants sat at the defense table, their lawyers surrounding them like a fortress. On the prosecution side, Marcus sat in the gallery with Thomas Brenner, Jessica Torres, Sarah Chen, and 11 other victims. 11 veterans who'd been targeted, who'd been hurt, who'd had their sense of security stolen. The prosecution called Marcus first. He walked to the stand, was sworn in, and sat down. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Elizabeth Marsh, smiled at him. Mr. Webb, Can you tell the court what happened on the night of November 17th? Marcus told his story. Calmly, clearly, he described the break-in, the confrontation, the arrests. He didn't embellish, didn't make himself sound heroic. Just laid out the facts. Then the defense attorney cross-examined him, tried to make him sound like a vigilante, tried to suggest he'd used excessive force, tried to paint him as a dangerous man who'd overreacted to a simple burglary. Marcus didn't rise to the bait. He just answered the questions. Truthfully, patiently. Mr. Webb, isn't it true that you could have simply locked your bedroom door and waited for police? I could have, but that would have given the intruders time to arm themselves, fortify positions, or take hostages if there had been anyone else in the home. My training taught me that controlling the situation immediately was the safest option for everyone involved. Everyone? Including the men who entered your home? Yes, if I'd waited, if the situation had escalated, it could have ended with someone dead. Instead, it ended with everyone alive and heading to the hospital or jail. I'd call that a success. The defense attorney had no response to that. Over the next 2 weeks, the prosecution built their case. They showed the pattern, the targeting, the coordination between the defendants. They brought in victim after victim, veterans who testified about what had been done to them, what had been taken, how it had changed their lives. Thomas Brenner testified. At 73 years old, he stood in that witness box and described being beaten in his own home, described the shame he'd felt. And then he looked directly at the defendants and said, "But I'm not ashamed anymore, because what happened to me wasn't my fault, it was yours, and now you're going to pay for it." The jury deliberated for 6 hours, guilty, on all counts, for all defendants. Tyler Brennan got 15 years, Deacon Wright got 18 because of the weapons charge. The others got sentences ranging from 8 to 12 years. Marcus sat in the courtroom as the verdicts were read, surrounded by the people he'd helped, the community he'd built, and he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Peace, real peace, not the absence of conflict, but the presence of purpose. After the trial, after the news crews had gotten their footage and the courthouse had emptied, Marcus stood on the steps with Havoc. The dog sat at his side, looking out at the city, his breath forming small clouds in the cold air. Sarah Chen walked up beside him. "We did it," she said quietly. "You all did it." Marcus corrected. "Every person who testified, every person who refused to stay silent. That's what won this case. Guardian Protocol is getting national attention now. I've gotten calls from veterans organizations in 12 states asking how they can start their own chapters." Marcus smiled. "Then I guess we have work to do." They stood there for a moment, looking out at the city as the sun began to set. Somewhere in this city, there were veterans struggling, feeling alone, feeling unprepared for the challenges of civilian life. But now, they had somewhere to go, someone to call, a community that understood. Marcus had come home from war looking for peace and quiet. What he'd found instead was purpose, a new mission, not fighting enemies overseas, but helping warriors find their strength at home. He looked down at Havoc. The dog looked up at him, tail wagging slowly. "Come on, boy," Marcus said. "Let's go home." And as they walked down the courthouse steps together, a veteran and his dog, Marcus knew with absolute certainty that he was exactly where he was supposed to be, doing exactly what he was meant to do. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that our warriors deserve support long after they take off the uniform, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to our channel for more stories of courage, resilience, and the unbreakable bonds between those who serve. And let us know in the comments, who inspired you most in this story? Was it Marcus, who turned his trauma into purpose? Was it Havoc, the loyal canine who never stopped protecting? Was it Sarah who found her strength again? Or was it Thomas, who proved it's never too late to reclaim your dignity? We read every single comment. Your words matter, your voice matters. Thank you for listening. Stay safe, stay strong, and remember, you're never alone.